Understand that the Greeks and the Orphic doctrines believed that Saturn ruled over all form and that he was the architect of all creation. All creation. The material creation specifically. But they said all creation. And it said that Saturn ruled before there was time. Before time existed. And he's also considered the god of time. Duality again. And because we live in the world of form and he's the architect and ruler of it, we are subject to its laws and designs and therefore subject to Saturn's laws and designs. And at the core of those laws, the basic core of our material reality is duality. It is. No matter what ideology you want to cling to, white, black, male, female, night, day, good, evil, all that. It's our existence. We learn through comparison. That's how we learn as people, is through comparison of opposites. It's just the way it is. Even to say that it isn't is literally to compare it to the fact that it is, which is also, again, dual. Checkmate. It's just the way it works. And this is what like Saturn and Janus is trying to point out to us. Is that dual nature, right? It's trying to help us understand it, which again, understanding is Bina in the crown, the Kether, which is what Saturn represents in the Sephiroth. We're basically trying to learn that it's never really this or that it is just us or you, right? It's our perception through the conceptualization of opposites, through humanity's systems of learning and language, that any of these concepts in duality even exist. And this realization will point not only to your self-knowledge and give you responsibility for your own thoughts and actions, but it'll help you have a deeper understanding of true oneness that exists throughout all the cosmos, right? It sounds chaotic, and it is. And of course, Saturn, according to Carl Jung, and not just Carl Jung, ruled over chaos, right? In alchemy, it was also Mercury, right? Jung said, in all chaos there is cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. It's a Saturnian quote through and through, specifically because Saturn does rule over chaos. See, Jung was an introverted thinker. That means he was always thinking. He's an introvert by nature, really. Always in contemplation. That's why he was a student, too. He believed that his entire life was ruled over by the Saturnian influence, as did Marsilio Ficino. They both have they're ascendant as Aquarius with Capricorn in the first house. Or not Capricorn in the first house, with Saturn in the first house. And Saturn was the ancient ruler of Aquarius, and now co-ruler. And an actual quote from Carl Jung in Liber Novus, the Red Book. The ruler of my birth, old Saturnus, slowed down my maturation process to such an extent that I became aware of my own ideas only at the beginning of the second half of my life, exactly 36 years of age. Jung believed that he ruled chaos, that Saturn did, and Mercury as well. But being that Mercurius is literally the son of Saturn, and by extension also he was closest to the sun, Michael, as far as the angels, and is always illuminated by his rays. And it could be argued that, so basically Mercury is probably an acolyte of Saturn, but at the same time he was closest to the sun. So then you get that Saturn-Sun connection again. It's most likely that the other face on Janus is Mercury. It's really the sun. It's really Mercury representing the sun. Because think about Icarus, right? He who flew too close to the sun, what happened? Burned up and died. You can't fly too close to the sun. And if you study theosophy and you study the cosmic rays, the first ray is the ray that represents the sun and that cannot really manifest itself in a human because it's purely destructive in nature because it's so powerful. And that's why we have to do it through that which is closest, which would be Mercury, if that makes sense. So Mercury is basically the sun's representative, though it is the sun of, because we can only get that which is close. We can't get the pure because it would just burn us. Too close to the sun, Icarus, you'll burn to death. If that makes sense, right? It again connects the sun and Saturn, but also gives us Mercury, our ability to experience the sun and not be burnt to death. And Mercury also rules our ability to learn. Yeah, and so that's why I think the two faces are. So really, the two faces in Janus are not just Saturn, but Saturn and an expression of the sun, or Mercury as the sun. You know, Jung associated all Mercury and Saturn with the chaotic expression of the primordial cosmogenic source, or the universal first matter. Specifically, that's what Mercury is, or what he represents. The Mula Prakriti, which is the source matter from which everything was formed. So Saturn basically took, what takes us back to Saturn as the architect of everything. He used the mercurial substance to shape everything. And if you look at like the aspects of the early universe and how scientists say that it was formed, right? It was chaotic and immature, exploding out of a big bang, right? And Saturn and Mercury in natal charts can be looked at with a similar influence as chaotic. At least, at the very least, they rule over it. And especially if the individuation process, like if you haven't begun to discover and integrate your shadow, you will really notice those planets may bring chaotic experiences into your life. You know, Jung believed Saturn ruled the unconscious, and I absolutely believe that too. And I will go far as to add, as the architect of all reality and ruler before time and of all consciousness, both our unconscious light and conscious light derive from Saturn. Though I would say that the conscious light is expressed through the Sun-Mercury connection, Sun and Mercury, and they do have influence over that conscious light, but its progenitor, where it came from, is the dark, fertile void in which everything sprang out of, including light, like the Big Bang came out of the darkness. That, again, it points to the fact that Saturn was first, or the progenitor, or the designer, which is Saturn's realm, right? The fertile, and that, again, it points to goddess worship. And those that worship the black cube are into goddess worship, and they worship Saturn.